Good evening. My name is Richard Bernier with Sound Off Buncombe. As you know, Sound Off Buncombe is a live show every Thursday night at 8 o'clock here on URTV here in Asheville. I have a special guest here today where we are going to spend 30 minutes with a Congressman Howard Cobel. Welcome.
Richard, good to be in Buncombe, in the land of the sky.
Land of the sky. Well, you know, you're from the 6th District.
That's
representing
correct.
the folks in 6th District. Folks out there may not know where the 6th District, what areas do you cover?
Richard, unlike the 11th District, which are many counties, I have only 6 counties. I have Alamance, which of course is Burlington, Elon University. I have a third of Guilford County, Greensboro and High Point. Guilford is one of the few counties in North Carolina, Richard, that is located in 3 congressional districts. I have about almost half of Davidson County, Thomasville, Denton, and then North Davidson, the Midway area. I have about almost half of Rowan County, virtually nothing in Salisbury, but the Rowan portion of Kannapolis, China Grove, Rockwell, Granite Quarry. I have the entire county of Randolph County, Asheboro, and Richard, the home, if you will pardon my immodesty, the home of one of the finest zoos in the world. And finally, the entire county of Moore, again, pardon my immodesty, Richard, the golf capital of America.
That's got to be Pinehurst.
Pinehurst and Southern Pines and the entire county. So I have 2 counties in their entirety, Randolph and Moore, and portions of Alamance, Guilford, Davidson, and Rowan, a rather compact district geographically. As I say, unlike the 11th, which goes from here to the Tennessee border and I guess to the South Carolina border.
It does actually up in the Murphy area,
Yeah.
yes, and it's basically Georgia.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Georgia as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me ask you this, kind of get a little bit of background, more background. How many terms have you been our congressman in the 6th District?
Well, I'm in my 12th term.
12th term. Okay.
Elected in 1984.
1984. Well, let me ask you this. It's an election season for our president, candidates that are running. What's the atmosphere up in Washington, D.C. right now?
Presidentially dominated.
Oh.
I think most activity, well, strike that. Well, I guess I should say it that way. I think most activity in Washington is going to probably take second stage to the presidential election. I think that's not unlike the situation in all presidential years. And we can see we just had a taste of it.
Yes.
It's been going on for about a year now. We got another year to go.
Yeah. And we just wrapped up we've had the Iowa caucuses. We're getting ready to go now into Massachusetts?
Well, New Hampshire tomorrow.
New Hampshire tomorrow.
New Hampshire tomorrow.
That's right, yeah.
To be followed imminently by Michigan, South Carolina, and then, of course, Super Tuesday.
Super Tuesday.
And you know, Richard, it's conceivable that by the end of Super Tuesday, perhaps the nominees may have been identified by that time.
It very well could be, Congressman, and it may, if it was to stay a tight race, it could always go to the actual convention and be decided on the floor. That would be the very first time in history, if I'm not bad mistaken.
It'd be a long time since that happened,
yeah. Now, since you've been a member of Congress now, which venues do you sit on? What boards and so forth up in Congress do you sit on?
I sit on 2 committees.
Richard.
Transportation. The Transportation Committee has jurisdiction over virtually every form of transportation in the country. Airports, bridges, railroads, the Coast Guard, waterways. I think I left one out. I don't remember. Bridges, railroads, airports.
Airports.
Yeah. The Judiciary Committee has jurisdiction over the Justice Department, FBI, of course, the Patent and Trademark Office, Copyright Office, constitutional amendments. Any bill that would propose to amend the Constitution would be assigned to the Judiciary Committee. Antitrust legislation involving judiciary. The 2 subcommittees on which I sit are the Crime Subcommittee and the Intellectual Property and Courts Subcommittee, and Internet as well.
Well, you know, I do want to go back and talk more about the political season as far as presidential, but before we go there, and I'm sure a lot of people want your opinion on those issues, or at least your thoughts
Well,
on
my
that.
opinion, Richard, might not be any more authentic than your listeners,
Okay,
or your
well,
viewers.
we'll see. But let's go back to one of the committees that you're on, the transportation, in particular airports. Where are we standing right now in our airports throughout the United States?
Richard, I think one of the most salient domestic issues will involve vehicular congestion, symbol for dash, airport congestion. Mm-hmm. Those are two issues that negatively impact productivity. And as far as the vehicular congestion is concerned, it results in excessive consumption of gasoline at $3 a gallon now, $3 plus in some places. So those two issues need to be resolved to at least mollify what is a problem. I mean, congestion, road rage on the highways, road rage in the airports. Those are two issues that must be resolved, in my opinion. And that's on the transportation side. Infrastructure, the tragedy, Richard, that occurred several months ago in Minnesota.
The bridges.
Is not unique to Minnesota. I'm sure that I'm talking to people in Buncombe County and other counties in western North Carolina. There are bridges in your district over which you will cross this week, Richard, that were probably unsafe. Bridges in the congressional district I represent, no doubt bridges that are unsafe. So the infrastructure is going to have to be addressed more firmly than it has been in recent times. And this is not the Democrats and Republicans alike can be blamed for this, for not having stayed on top of it better than we have.
Well, would that come into play? You know, I'm sure funding has been available for infrastructure, but will some of that funds turned into a special port project in districts instead of fixing a bridge? You know, fixing a bridge is, you can't see it.
Yeah.
You can drive across it every day. But to have a greenway or a bike track, you can see it, feel it, and even participate on it. So was the funds available for that area to take care of those bridges?
Well, that's a good point. In many instances, probably so. Mm-hmm. Now, most of the on-the-ground decisions are made at the various state capitals, Raleigh in the case of North Carolina, and what it should be. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the people in the Department of Transportation in Raleigh probably are in a better position to determine what routes would be taken, what bridges are to be repaired and brought up to speed, rather than we in the Congress. I hope that the monies have been properly marshaled, but you can't always guarantee that.
Yeah. Well, we definitely, in my opinion, I think infrastructure should be our number one priority as far as taking care of the safety for the citizens of not just North Carolina, but also throughout the United States.
I concur.
You know, and so forth. Well, let's go more back to what's the headlining news here. We're going back to a presidential race. The Iowa caucuses, you know, that came out. Any surprises on either side of the ticket there? What's your opinion of what happened?
Well, surprises, Richard, as to the margin of victory.
Uh-huh.
Obama and Huckabee. I think most all of us who followed the day-to-day reporting from Iowa pretty well came to the conclusion that it was inevitable that Huckabee and Obama would be the Republican and Democrat nominee respectively. Mm-hmm. I did not, however, foresee the margin of victory as being so convincing.
Mm-hmm. Now the chosen one on the Democrat side, it appeared early on, was going to be Hillary Clinton.
And I still believe she may well be the Democrat nominee, even though Obama blew her doors off in Iowa and is predicted to blow her doors off in New Hampshire. I still believe at the end of the day, I believe Senator Clinton will be the Democrat nominee. Now, some folks asked me down home, in fact, this very day before I came to Asheville, who my choice for president was. I said, well, to tell you what a good prognosticator I am, my choice for our nominee, Richard, was Senator George Allen from Virginia. You remember he failed in his reelection bid in 2006.
Yes, sir, he did.
And I firmly believe, Richard, that if he had prevailed and had, in fact, been reelected to represent Virginia, I believe he would probably be our leader in the presidential race now.
You're exactly right, Congressman Coble, but all it takes is one sound bite.
And that's not to be.
That's right. Spin that the media can turn on it, and he could not even get reelected. It was a close election, but he would have won hands down had not spin not came out. But that's just the way it went.
That's the way it went, and that's the hand that's presently being held. Now, today, if you stake me out, Richard, which you're getting ready to do, I've narrowed it down to probably 3, maybe 4. I could live with Rudy Giuliani. I could live with Governor Romney. I could live with Governor Huckabee. Now, this is going to knock you off your chair, Richard, but I'm going to surprise you with this next one.
All right.
Ron Paul.
Oh,
that
really knocked me off.
Now, I don't embrace everything Ron says, but I was in Boone not too long ago, and Ron Paul signs are all over the Blue Ridge Mountains. I saw Appalachian students holding up big Ron Paul for President signs. And I called one of the students over at Appalachia, and I said, I commend you students for your volunteerism in helping with these campaigns. And I said, I'll tell Ron Paul that you're working for him. Do you know him personally? I said, Paul, you've become a rock star in the Blue Ridge.
Yeah.
But much of what Ron says, I don't embrace. But much of what he says, I do embrace. He's a libertarian, as you know,
yes, libertarian.
Richard, in Republican clothing. I could even live with McCain. Sometimes McCain goes off the reservation, but he's a little maverick, and I have a little maverick in me, so I can't really fault him for that. Mm-hmm. So I really had to help you much, Richard, because I've given you four or five names.
The only one you didn't give was one that I kind of wanted to see early on, and I still have some hopes for him. You didn't even mention his name, and that would be Fred Thompson.
Yeah, Thompson didn't make my cut.
Didn't make your cut. Well, we thought up here in the Carolina mountains that he would be a voice of a good conservative, but it just seemed like he didn't catch on.
It doesn't seem that he does. Of course, he's not over yet, but it's still not likely.
It appears.
But and I believe you said that you didn't disagree with me when I said that I still believe that Senator Clinton is a force with whom to contend, but Obama he obviously has the momentum now.
Mm-hmm. I think when the latter states come in, that's whenever Clinton will pick her steam up, and I think she will come in to be the nominee. But it's interesting, and I'm glad that Ron Paul has got the youth to be active in this election. I'm glad that Obama has at least appeared to get that, because when we have a low turnout of less than 20 to 25% of the total population that votes, that is almost a cry for defeat for the purpose of how our government stands today. We need to get involved in elections.
Well, Richard, you and I are talking today prior to the New Hampshire primary. Mm-hmm. I believe Ron Paul will make a credible showing in New Hampshire.
Oh, I think he will too.
And I'm not convinced that McCain is going to drub Governor Romney the way the prognosticators are claiming. Now, you and I have also omitted, and I don't think we've intentionally omitted it, we have failed to mention a North Carolinian.
John Edwards.
Now, if John Edwards, again, my opinion, and I repeat, Richard, my opinion is no better than your opinion nor your viewers. Mm. But I believe if John Edwards does not fare well in New Hampshire, and by well, I mean a number 2 spot, I just believe that the future does not look rosy for him in this current edition.
That's a good perspective that you're coming out of. But one thing that I think the folks here in North Carolina has already found out about John Edwards, I'm not sure if he can win his own state when it comes to running.
That's a good point. You're not the first person who's told me that. Mm-hmm. In fact, his parents, I've come to know his dad pretty well. Dad's a first-rate guy. Mm-hmm. Don't know John that well, but in fact, I met his dad in Moore County. They live in my county, in one of my counties. when John Edwards ran against my very good friend Locke Faircloth, who I'm sure may have been on your program, has he?
No, he was before we had our access channel.
Okay,
going.
and I get along well with John Edwards. I just don't know him, but I met Mr. Edwards, his dad, on election day. In fact, I believe it was raining that day. I'm pretty sure it was, and we hit it off pretty well. And then I saw him most recently in Moore County, in the town of Robbins, where he lives. And he came up to me and said, "Oh, Mr. Coble, how are you?" And I said, Mr. Edwards? He said, "Yep, that is I. We had a nice visit down there. But
that sounds fantastic. You know, it really is a small world when
it is
you get
indeed.
out here. You know, no doubt about it. You know, a lot of folks are probably thinking right now, why am I not more focusing on some current events? But I kind of want to get a feel for you and your experience and how the folks that you represent, and because you need to be introduced to the folks in the western part of North Carolina. You may represent the 6th District, but I just wanted to go that route. Now, having said that, let's turn to one of the most divisive issues at hand today, and that's the war. What's your opinion about the war at this point?
Well, Richard, when we lost our majority in the election, when we won our majority in '94 in the House in Washington, and had that majority role until '06, I claim that one of the reasons, two of the reasons that we lost our majorityship involved the S words and the I words. The S words, scandal and spending. The I words, Iraq and immigration. And the scandals, I have served, Richard, with members, Democrats and Republicans alike, who are either now serving active prison sentences or who have served prison sentences. I think a total of 5. We were blamed for most of that. Both Democrats and Republicans have both been guilty, but we were in the majority after all. And you come near blaming the people who are in the wheelhouse of the ship more than the people who are out on the deck.
Absolutely.
Of course, the Democrats are in the wheelhouse now, as you know. And I think the scandals hurt us. Many of our base, Richard, were turned off by us because we were reckless spenders. We didn't practice prudent spending, as the Republican Party is known for. And then, of course, Iraq. I think it was not inappropriate to dispatch troops to Iraq because I am convinced that Saddam Hussein was an international terrorist. But Richard, let's be candid about it. The post-entry strategy, sloppy. I don't know whether it was bad intelligence, whether it was good intelligence that was ignored, but we did a very bad job of post-entry strategy. And of course, they're blaming us for it, and rightly so. We were in the wheelhouse of the ship. Immigration, Democrats and Republicans alike, in my opinion, must shoulder the blame for this. It's been ignored for so long, almost as if to say, well, if we ignore it, it'll get better or it'll go away. Well, Richard, when you ignore problems, they rarely get better and they rarely go away. I believe the solution to immigration, of course, that'll be one of our judiciary matters too. I don't sit on the immigration subcommittee, however. But it is my firm belief that it's going to have to be done in a two-pronged approach. A, secure the border. That's going to have to be done first. And I believe, and this is controversial, what I'm about to say, Richard, I believe there must be some sort of accommodation for guest workers. Guest workers, seasonal workers, needed workers, call them what you will. But I have talked to people in my district, the district I represent, tobacco farmers, farmers generally, pork producers, poultry producers, landscapers, restaurateurs. They tell me that if the arsenal from which they draw these guest workers, if that arsenal was foreclosed and no longer available to them, they tell me that it would be catastrophic. And they furthermore, Richard, tell me that most of these workers are dependable, and many of these workers, according to them, they tell me that they're not taking jobs from Americans because they can't find local people to do the jobs. So those are issues that will be forthcoming and are going to have to be addressed. Now, when I say, Richard, it's going to take second stage behind the presidential election, I didn't mean to conclude that nothing's going to be accomplished between now and November of '08. But I think you and I and your viewers know that the presidential election will be first and foremost.
Well, you know, you hit on two issues there, war and immigration. And I want to pinpoint, let's go back to the war a second. Be real blunt, because a lot of people want blunt answers, and I would feel like I'm not doing a service to a lot of folks out there and asking you, do we belong in that war over there right now?
Well, we're there.
Okay.
And that's the problem.
Do we need to leave the war? Do we need to give up and leave?
I don't think we want to give up. But in fact, I may have been the first Republican who voted for it. There were very few Republicans voted against it. But if I had known, Richard, that the post-entry strategy was as ill prepared as it was, I probably would have voted against it. I assumed, and I don't think it was unreasonable for those in the Congress to assume that some sort of post-entry strategy has been detailed and thoroughly laid out. But we're there. I don't think we can afford to give up. I think one of the salient omissions, in addition to our having not done a good job on post-entry strategy, has been the failure of the Iraqi government. I think we need to be more firm with them and say, now listen, guys, you all wanted Saddam removed, we removed him. Now it's time for you all to roll up your respective sleeves and get with it. And I think I'd rather approach it that way, Richard, rather than just abruptly leave tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I don't think we can do that. I don't think we can in good conscience do that. But I think we can certainly start talking about it and let withdrawal be on the table.
Yeah. Well, Congressman Coble, let's say the early intentions of fighting this war were incorrect as far as the plan. But we now have realized that and went to General Petraeus and asked him for he's asked for an influx after he did his review, and it appears from reports that we're hearing that it's working. Do you think right now the influx of extra military personnel, is it working in that war?
I'll use the same word you did, Richard. It appears so. I'm very high on Petraeus. Don't know him personally. Met him a couple of times. I was not confident that the surge would work, but I believe it is. But keep in mind, well, it is as far as violence having subsided, is not working as far as the political part of the equation, because that was part of the surge to accelerate Iraqi political resolution, and they're behind the curve on that. And I think maybe we haven't been firm enough in putting our foot down and saying, listen, guys, let's get moving. Now, as far as weapons of mass destruction, Richard, I'll go to my grave believing that Saddam had them. Where they are, I don't know, because they hadn't been detected. But I'm confident that he had them or the wherewithal to produce them.
Well, was our intelligence not up to par?
I don't know.
You don't know?
You'll see, I don't sit on the Intelligence Committee, and much of that would be exclusively reserved for them.
I understand.
But it seems to me, common sense tells me that either the intelligence was flawed or else we ignored. If the intelligence was not flawed, some of our people in responsible positions didn't respond as they should have.
Well, that definitely gives me an insight from your perspective. Now, let's go back to immigration for a second. And this is a question that is asked a lot here in local media as far as talk media here on radio and here on public access TV is, why can we just not ask anyone here in this country, if you're illegally here, to just leave? Would that be so wrong to ask someone that?
Well, it would not be wrong, but there are probably in excess of 12 million who are here illegally, Richard, and I think logistically it's probably not feasible to say that okay, you 12 million hit the road. your question is a fair. Your statement's a fair one. I don't know how well it would be implemented.
Yeah. Well, you know, I asked this because my own wife came here from Italy. She had to go through the process of getting to be a natural citizen here as far as her citizen's paper here for the United States. And it was a long process.
And she stood in line.
Stood in line. Again, a good example of that would be Congressman Coble. If we're at the grocery store and 10 people gets in front of us, jumps in front. A lot of people feel abused in that system. Then we have folks that are outside this country that are wanting to come here, that are playing by the rules. But, you know, what benefit to them if they cannot, why don't they just come on in too, like everyone else? And that's a question that we hear a lot of.
And I'm glad you brought that out too, Richard. I want to make clear to your viewers that I am not endorsing amnesty. I didn't mean to even imply that. And many of these guest workers, they'll come here, they'll go back to their home country, then come back for the next season. But I don't think amnesty is the answer. Now, some folks have proposed amnesty. If we do amnesty, we're slapping in the face the people who are in line and who have complied with the rules as they should have.
Well, would amnesty be any type of workers program that you mentioned earlier? Could that lead to that? Because a lot of people think that workers program is just a cloud for amnesty.
I don't believe that. I don't think so. That may be subject to interpretation, but I don't believe that would qualify as amnesty.
I understand. Well, you know, in my opinion, whenever the fall election comes up for a president, that I think the number one issue, I think it will not be the war. I think it's going to be immigration, and maybe the war second. You know,
and another feature too, Richard, the economy.
The economy. That's absolutely, because as you know, our American dollar is very weak right now.
I know.
You know, and if you could summarize it, what do you think is the number one problem facing the Americans today? We have about 3 minutes left. Could you give me about a 2-minute answer on that?
Well, I think one of our problems is our failure to refine, to drill and refine for oil. We could do it in Anwar. We could do it offshore more than we've done. And I think we could do it in Anwar and offshore without damaging the environment. I'm convinced of that. Now, the good news is, Richard, much of our petroleum is imported from friends, i.e., Canada to the north, Mexico to the south. That's the good news, because they're friendly nations. But we also get a lot of our petroleum from countries occupied by people who hate us. And that's a very fragile arrangement. When you're getting oil, a very, very necessary commodity, from people who don't like us, that causes me to sleep with one eye open at night. And I think we need to emphasize the importance of refining domestically in a safe way as far as the environment's exposure is concerned.
Well, as everyone knows, it's been years since we've had a refinery built here in the United States, and you know, and so forth. But anyway, if you just tuned in, I'm here with Congressman Coble from the 6th District, and we're actually wrapping up. Congressman, thank you for coming up in the western part of North Carolina.
And the land of the sky.
Land of the sky. We want to be certain that you come back, and you're always welcome to come on Public Access TV and share your views and let the folks be introduced to a gentleman that served several years in Congress.
Well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And again, folks, thank you for watching Sound Off Buncombe. Again, do your research, Google the congressman here, find out where he stands on other issues. And again, thank you for watching Sound Off Buncombe. Good night.